Try to take me out there.
I will call this meeting to order.
Who blinks first? Thank you. The first item on this evening's agenda is the minutes of the regular council meeting held on Monday, January 14th. The recommendations to approve those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, second by Councillor Robinson. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 2 is the Coquitlam Aquatic Infrastructure and Services Strategy. We have a two-part recommendation to adopt the strategies outlined in the report and refer the renewal plan to the budget process. We do have our introductory comments by the General Manager and followed by a staff presentation.
Yes, Your Worship, just by way of a few introductory comments before turning it over to Joyce Fordyce, Manager of Recreation, and Jason Blood in his capacity as Aquatic Services Manager. They will be providing the on-screen presentation this evening. Both Joyce and Jason were the lead staff on this project, working with external experts, Brian Johnson and John McMurchie from Professional Environmental Recreation Consultants. And they have prepared the final report, which is presented this evening and attached to your staff report. The City, of course, has a very strong tradition in aquatic services, going back to long ago successes in pools that are not even part of our inventory anymore. And here I'm thinking about some of the historic pools that used to be on Riverview lands in Blue Mountain, and Glen Park. So we've been in the aquatic services business for a long time. But we're in a new generation of aquatic facilities now with recent major investments in Chimo Pool and the new spray parks at Galloway and Mackin Park, which just opened last summer. Aquatic services continue to be of importance to citizens, and residents travel to various facilities throughout the city, and indeed they travel outside of the city and throughout the region in order to access their aquatic services. The city and citizens have pools for many different reasons, and people use these facilities as differently as they are and as their families are. For some, it's about recreational swimming. For others, it's to develop skills, or for fitness, or sport training and competition, or coming for special events, whether those are private birthday party events or large community social events. Some come for therapy and rehabilitation. And of course, our summer spray pads and outdoor pools offer people a chance to cool off in the extreme summer heat. We also offer leadership training in our pools, and that's often a bit of a rite of passage for many young people to achieve their certification as lifeguards and move on to some very rewarding and challenging employment opportunities. People access these services either on a drop-in basis, 7 days a week, most days of the year. They might register in a structured Learn to Swim program, or they may access the services through some type of a rental. The report you have before you tonight outlines a long-term vision for the future of aquatic facilities. It's a high-level strategy which describes a future in the city and in the context of our neighbouring city of Port Coquitlam, who we coordinated with in this body of work. The study report I hope you find is to be comprehensive, in that it includes a good understanding of the condition of our existing infrastructure, which I'm happy to say is in very good condition, how our pools are used by the public, the maximum capacity use of our pools, and when our population will grow to the point that we're at full occupancy, the regional context of our neighbouring municipalities, recognizing the important and unique role that natural water bodies provide, particularly in the hot summer heat. It has inputs from extensive dialogue with users, as well as input from the Sports Council, best practices in the industry, our demographic projections, and a very close examination of data that we collect from our users and dialogue with our expert staff. Tonight, staff are recommending that Council adopt the strategy and refer the capital renewal plan aspect of the study to the next budget process, noting that Council has already improved investments to upgrading the Burns Spray Park in the current 5-year capital program, and that any future capital investment in aquatic facilities will need to be prioritized in the context of other future projects. With that, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it over to Ms. Fordyce and Mr. Blood for the staff presentation.
Thank you, Laurie, and good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. I would also like to acknowledge tonight that we have the coach from the Hyack Swim Club here, Mark Buttrell, which is here also to hear the findings of the report. And as Laurie said, this evening is about sharing an exciting new vision for aquatic infrastructure and services in Coquitlam. The Aquatic Infrastructure and Services Strategy establishes a long-range plan for renewal and development of aquatic facilities in Coquitlam over the next 15 years. And as you'll remember, this process began about a year ago when we were here in front of you talking about an infrastructure failure at Rochester Pool. After that meeting, we commissioned a study in cooperation with Port Coquitlam, and we are here today to share Coquitlam's findings of that study. The PowerPoint presentation I am going to walk through is about 10 slides, and it's going to cover the key research findings, our capacity of our pools, some of the key strategic directions, and introduce the capital renewal plan, the 15-year plan. And that plan will take Coquitlam's aquatic infrastructure through to 2028. At the end of the presentation, Ms. McKay, our General Manager, Jason and myself will be available to answer questions. So let's start by looking at some of the key findings. The Ipsos Reid survey that the city does every year gives us a really important piece of data and research for this, and that is that the citizens really value and aquatic infrastructure. Swimming pools are consistently rated high by citizens, both as investment priorities for the city and in citizen satisfaction. Now, the following 4 research findings come directly from the study which was conducted over the past year. Last summer, 700 intercept surveys were conducted as exit interviews from pools, outdoor pools, indoor pools, and spray parks. And they paint a picture of our typical user. And as Ms. McKay talked about in her opening statements, they are very mobile. The majority of those users do come to the sites in a personal car, and they often travel by one site to get to their favorite site. Moving forward, we shouldn't just take this piece of information. We should be strategic about where we locate our sites and make sure there are transit options there as well. One of the other findings is about sport hosting, and CCAC is well positioned to bid for provincial level events, and they're positioned to bid for more events than what they host now. The strategy we'll highlight in a few moments will recommend some upgrades to that pool to better meet sport hosting needs. One of the other key research findings, and we were thrilled to hear from the study, is that Coquitlam aquatic facilities are high quality, and that the number of annual swims per capita is comparable to other cities with similar quality pools. And that's at about 6.6 swims per resident per year, indoors, and 0.6 outdoors. And one of the probably most telling and important factors for us today in planning for the future is our capacity. And from the capacity levels, we were able to determine that we still have room to grow in our existing facilities. So before we look at the details of capacity, I thought we'd just review where our current operating facilities are in 2012. The blue dots on the map are Coquitlam Aquatic Center, our City Center Aquatic Complex, and Poirier Sport and Leisure. The red dots are Eagle Ridge Pool and Spaney. The lone green dot is Blue Mountain Wading Pool, and the yellow dots are the spray parks that are throughout our city. So this was the current inventory operating in 2012. Now this chart here is compiling our actual visits in 2011 versus the capacity that those sites are available for. And that capacity is made up of 8 categories: recreational swimming, skill development, fitness swimming, sport training, which is our sport groups, special events, primarily swim meets, but some other large gatherings, therapy, rehabilitation, respite from heat, and leadership training. What you can see is in 2011 we had just over 900,000 visits. Our capacity is just under 1.2 million. So we have room to grow still at our sites. And based on these numbers, there's no pressing priorities today. And what this will allow is time for us to create a vision and to plan well in advance for the new facilities, both budget-wise and service-wise. We have been told by the consulting team that, coincidentally, when we get to capacity in about 7 to 10 years, that'll be about the same time Port Coquitlam's Hyde Creek is reaching its capacity in the Northeast. So now that we know where we're at today, let's look at what the future could be. Let's talk about some strategic directions. And as Ms. McKay said in her opening statement, this strategy focuses on enhancing aquatic experiences in the city. The strategy focuses on enhancing outdoor experiences and recommends spray decks be incorporated into more neighborhood parks throughout the city. Further, it recommends enhancements be made at Spaney Pool by clustering other outdoor facilities there on that site and upgrading to handle sporting events better. It also suggests at City Centre be turned into a larger destination site with an outdoor feature attached to it and upgrades for sport hosting. And finally, the strategy establishes a timeline for renewal and recommends a new community level pool in Northeast Coquitlam. So these are the 3 types of facilities the strategy recommends. Citywide, which is CCAC and Spaney; community level, Eagle Ridge, Poirier Sport and Leisure, and the new Northeast Pool; neighborhood facilities, spray decks throughout the city. So let's look at each one specifically. Citywide facilities. These are destination sites to support the Celebrate Coquitlam strategy. They provide services and amenities to attract citizens and visitors for extended stays and swims at the site, and they enhance the capacity for aquatic sporting events. The swim clubs identified through the consultation process that both Spaney and CCAC could benefit from some enhancements such as increased deck space, improved marshalling areas, bleachers to better accommodate meets. Spaney Pool could become an all-day destination site in the crown jewel of Mundy Park with spray parks, gradual entry, wading pools, places where you'd want to go for the whole day and picnic and hang out. The picture on the top right there is a night shot of Hillcrest Pool in Vancouver. And that is an outdoor pool attached to their large 50-meter swim complex and community center. And it's able to operate about 4.5 months a year compared to our 3.5 because it is attached to another operating facility. The bottom right is a gradual entry wading pool with some play equipment. You know, something like this could be added to a Mundy Park. So those are the citywide destination sites outlined in the strategy. The next one are community facilities. And we categorize these as quality experiences strategically located. And the biggest recommendation here out of this one is a new pool in Northeast Coquitlam, likely early in the next decade. We'll need to monitor that and build facilities to maintain that 6.6 swims per resident. So depending how quick our city grows will determine whether it's, early in the next decade, 15 years from now, 10 years from now. So we will need to monitor and build to maintain that 6.6 swims per resident. The strategy recommends sustaining and continuing to operate Eagle Ridge Pool and not making a decision about Eagle Ridge until the other priorities in this strategy have been addressed. Spaney upgraded CCAC and a new pool in the Northeast. It recommends exploring non-municipal partnerships for aquatic services, and it encourages intermunicipal discussion about future facilities. So discussion with our partners about these very expensive pieces of infrastructure that citizens tend to cross borders for. The final area is neighborhood facilities, and this is really all about seasonal waterfront in a park setting. And the aquatic strategy encourages expansion of our current spray deck system in Coquitlam and recommends we increase the number and we locate them in neighborhood parks throughout the city, primarily through new development and as we redevelop old parks. Specifically, it talks about replacing the spray deck at Burns Park, and that is in the 2013 capital plan, whether we do it before the summer or whether we begin it in August and complete it over the fall. We're just in the planning stages for that now. It recommends upgrading Town Center Park spray deck, upgrading Blue Mountain, and it recommends closing the Blue Mountain wading pool after the upgrade to the spray park is done. Outdoor pools. Trends in BC and Canada demonstrate a significant decline in the investment in standalone outdoor pools. Now, the cost to build and operate a standalone outdoor pool for a very short season is significantly higher when you compare it to an indoor operation or the new emerging trend of indoor-outdoor operations. In recent years, in the Lower Mainland, New West has built a standalone outdoor pool, and we can't think of anyone else that has built one. Some municipalities have added an outdoor pool similar to the Hillcrest one, and that tends to be the new trend right now. So the strategy recommends no new standalone outdoor pools should be developed. It recommends that Rochester Pool not be rebuilt, and it recommends that we continue to sustain and operate Eagle Ridge Pool. Further, it recommends that we increase outdoor opportunities at CCAC, and we cluster additional outdoor features at Spaney. Now, the picture on the top right, you have seen a slide before of Hillcrest. The bottom one is that same tank during the day from a different angle. So you can see the gradual entry and the spray toys and things. So that is right off an existing indoor pool. Now finally, you go, okay, great ideas. What does this really mean? Let's talk about the capital renewal plan. And I think in context of this, it's identifying the facilities and service levels that are required to meet our growing community over the next 15 years. The city can proactively plan and deliver the community's future aquatic facilities in a cost-effective and a well-thought-out manner. And as I said earlier, there are no pressing priorities today. It's not like we're here today saying we need a new pool in the Northeast next year. We have time. The timing of this capital investment for renewal is flexible, can be adaptable, and it lays a great framework for us to begin to think about how to address that infrastructure over the next 15 years. The report doesn't have immediate financial implications, but if Council adopts the strategy, it will influence how decisions may be made regarding land, acquisition, facility development, and capital plans moving forward. And the potential expenditure without land is, in the $60 million range for aquatic facilities over the 15 years of the facility. Currently, the only funding for this strategy is the replacement of Burns spray deck, which is in this year's capital plan. So moving forward, we're recommending this capital plan goes to the budget process and is discussed in the capital budget process, prioritized against other civic needs moving forward and the master plan. So where are we in next steps? Incorporate the findings of this parks into the Parks, Recreation and Culture Master Plan. As I stated earlier, begin the work to replace the burn spray park, and that funding has been approved. And continue the dialogue and cooperative planning with our neighboring municipalities regarding infrastructure services moving forward. And with that, I will leave it to you for questions for Ms. McKay, myself, and Mr. Blood. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Fascinating report. As someone who began his work with the City of Coquitlam working at a swimming pool 3.5 decades ago, I've worked at many of the facilities that you've described as now closed, and I've even worked at a couple you've forgotten to mention, like Brookmere. So we've got a list of speakers here. Starting with Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you very much. And indeed a fascinating report. Over the weekend it inspired me to do some research into the history of public pools and start as public bathing facilities and about practices around the world as well. So it's, I think we're hitting a lot of the right marks with this report. I'm very impressed with it. I like the fact that you're talking about the integration of an outdoor facility, new outdoor facilities with existing indoor facilities. I know a lot of, like at Whistler, there's at least one of the hotels has an indoor pool that you can actually just swim through a sort of a doorway with plastic sheets that open up, and you can go to the outdoor pool, and that's open all year long, not just 5 months. So when they're connected like that, people will go as long as they can swim back into the indoors and stay warm. They can go outside. You know, I think that's a really good idea, and that's part of the evolving trends of aquatic swimming facilities, and I do know that these are very well used, and I do know that our citizens place a very high priority on them. And I've got, in the parameters of this report, I've got very little concern about the process that's laid out, the short-term, medium-term, and long-term recommendations. However, there's, I should say an elephant in the room, but there's an elephant in the pool, actually, when we come to talk about our mid and long-term strategy. And that's, we all know that it's been publicly announced that the YMCA has announced its intention to explore building a community center in Coquitlam, and such a community center would include a large, substantial indoor pool. We also know that the city and the YMCA publicly signed a memorandum of understanding to explore this possibility, and that the city would be a partner in such a project. And to me, this, if the Y, in partnership with the city, were to go ahead with this, this changes the charts of these waters. I would think that we've got this major report in front of us, looking at existing facilities, looking at things that we might build on our own or repair on our own, but that elephant in the pool is the YMCA proposal that's outstanding or floating. How does that fit into this thinking? If we adopt this as a an important strategic direction, 6 months from now, are we going to have to throw it out and start from scratch?
Excellent question. Through the chair. Let's go back a couple of slides, because we've got a couple of things here that will answer that question. First of all, as we were finalizing the report, we recognized that the YMCA would be a possibility. And if you remember on the slide, we talked about those neighborhood facilities. One of the key things was to look at aquatic service strategies and delivery with partner organizations, non-municipal. And in some communities, you will find that swim lessons are oversubscribed and you can't offer them at your pool, but you don't have enough capacity to build a whole new pool just for swim lessons. So you work with a hotel or a new development and you offer services through someone else's pool. So that is part of what they're talking about on that community level facilities. But we're also talking about YMCA type opportunities. This chart is really telling, because if you look at Poirier Sport and Leisure and you look at the visits in 2011, they were 380,000. Capacity at that pool is 389. And that is, out of all of our pools, that and Spaney are the closest to being full. And if a Y was to come into that North Road area, that would take significant load off those two sites, which could potentially extend when we need to build out in the Northeast. So it is, it won't throw out this.
Okay.
It might allow us to make this 17 or 18 years, or maybe a 20-year strategy, because that facility will provide part of that services, particularly when Spaney and Poirier Sport and Leisure, even though Poirier is our newest facility, is the closest to capacity.
Right. Well, you anticipated my follow-up question, or my more specific one, which was going to be which facility would be impacted and how would that impact the long-range plan. And I would think that, just like you, that the Poirier Sport and Leisure facility would see its numbers go down fairly substantially, and that I wanted to know what impact that would have on a Northeast, a need for a Northeast facility. So it would, and that could all be taken into account. We could, you're saying essentially that we could still adopt this general strategy and be flexible enough within it to accommodate a major change like a YMCA.
That's exactly.
If I could just add a couple of comments from the manager's office perspective, I see this as a good guiding map, guiding strategy in terms of moving forward, but it is certainly not cast in stone and should be amended as life evolves. And the two things I would like to highlight is, and it says it very clearly, that this is subject to the annual budget process. There's many budget needs in front of you, and it will be very difficult to achieve everything in accordance with the time frames of each individual component part. This is a very good strategy from the perspective of aquatics, but when you come down to the budget process, sometimes it's difficult, and so things have to amend and stretch out. The other comment that I would make with respect to the Y is their strategy is not yet finalized, and Joyce has said very well the effects of what a potential Y facility in Coquitlam would have on that part of the community. Depending how they move forward with their strategy, they may be part of the solution in the Northeast as well. All of that still has to unfold as time unfolds and as we go through this. So this is a good guiding strategy, but it is, we should not interpret it as something that's fixed in time. We'll refer back to it, but it will be amended as events unfold. I don't know if Lori has any further comments from that perspective, but that would be the way I would view this document.
Thank you through the chair. I think that does capture very much. Whenever we develop these kinds of strategies, we're not the only player. And even within our neighboring municipalities, they may well have plans in the long term as well. And these strategies do need to guide our approach to the future without prescribing in a very fixed timeline exactly what is going to happen.
Just one last point, and it's another possible impact of the possible YMCA facility, which would be there has been concern expressed in the past, and I'm sure will be, and probably might be tonight later on, about the proposal to permanently close the Rochester pool and to not rebuild that. And I would see that if a facility does go somewhere in the a Y facility does go somewhere in the North Road area, that's, I mean, it's not right in the, it's not super close to Rochester, but it's kind of in the general area. That would do something to certainly ameliorate the impact of losing this underutilized pool. It's a sort of facility that the Y would be a facility that could definitely take some of the usage that's currently at Rochester, not putting all of our hopes in the Y, but that's definitely would be an answer there as well. It would have an impact there too, correct? That's a question. Yes, okay, thank you.
Adding a a YMCA, a 25-meter pool tank, which is accessible to the public, would help with all of that area.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Hodge.
Yes, a good report, one that sort of is of particular interest to me. I have a young family, and we use the pools, and but I'm also discovering the spray decks, and I think that I really like the spray decks. And one of the things that I found, particularly up in my neighborhood, we've have two up in Burke Mountain, the new one that just opened at Galloway, as well as the Norm Staff Park. And what I do is I find them being used outside of pool season. I don't know if this has been intended, but outside of the summer swim season. But I think it's nice that we see the kids playing and still running around and enjoying some of the equipment there. It's not really climbing equipment, but there seems to be some use to the spray decks outside of the traditional swimming season, which I'm happy to see. And I don't know if that's something we encourage, but certainly it's something that I've noticed. I was happy to see that we worked with our neighbors on this, particularly up in the northeast, because as the report recognizes that at about the time that we're going to need a pool up in the northeast is about the time that Hyde Creek will have reached capacity. And I think that we are in a good position, because although Poirier is getting close to capacity, as a city we have capacity for today. And we have capacity for the next decade, but I think this is an opportunity for us to plan ahead. We're not behind the 8 ball right now, and I think we're in a very good spot. Certainly, it's unfortunate, that we've lost Rochester, and I think that's a real concern, particularly to the people in that neighborhood. And so, in the report, when we talk about looking for opportunities for neighborhood spray decks, I would think that that's possibly one of the areas that we want to look at doing some servicing. I know we've done some work down in Mackin, but I think the whole idea of neighborhood parks is to make them where kids can walk to and be right close. And I think that's why the ones up in my neighborhood are so successful. So it's not a big in-ground pool, but I think it's still something that the neighborhood, certainly the younger kids, can enjoy. But I do like the outdoor pools, and I know there's a trend away from building them, but I think we want to keep them going as long as we can. And I have a concern when we say that with Eagle Ridge, for example, and the comments that, well, we'll sort of make that decision down the road. I think we make that decision today, because I think that there's an opportunity to make a commitment to trying to prolong the life of that pool and invest in that pool. We have it. Certainly we might not be looking at building new pools, but I think we want to keep the outdoors going. And particularly the outdoor pools are very popular with the swim clubs, and I appreciate we have a representative from one of our swim clubs here tonight. But to me, most of our swim clubs from the Lower Mountain, they seem to gravitate to the outdoor pool. And I don't know if that's just because of space or why they use it, but I know that we've got the Sharks up at Spaney, the Marlins up in Port Coquitlam, they use an outdoor pool. I guess in Port Moody they don't have a choice but an outdoor pool. But I was just wondering, is that a specific, do the swim clubs prefer outdoor pools, or is it just where we have the space, or how is that just coincidence?
Jason, do you want to answer that? I'm going to ask Jason to answer that, if you don't mind, Chair. Sorry.
Excuse me.
Mr. Blood.
Through the chair, I would answer that based on a historical perspective. The Coquitlam Sharks being around for 50 years, having their home pool, a lot of summer swimming. They're part of the BC Summer Swimming Association. A lot of the meets, they go outdoors. They prefer to be outdoors. It's part of the culture of that. The HIAC and the Associated Winter Club, their season is 11.5 months long, so it makes most sense for them to train indoors most of the season, although they do take advantage of our outdoor facilities, specifically during the shutdown times that are indoor facilities, to take advantage of some of that. But I think it is kind of unique to the season of each type of club that we have.
Good. Okay. And I think that, as you said, that is part of the culture, and I think that's something that we don't want to lose. If we can, I think that's something, and we've heard from people who say we love the outdoor pools, but we see the stats. showing that that's not the case. So I understand where when we build, we want to build. I like the concept of new facilities trying to incorporate outdoor features, whether it's a swim through to get to the outdoor. I'm excited by the ideas of what we can do up at Spaney, particularly with some amenities around the pool. I know that when I take my family out to places even like the Cultus Lake water slides, that it's great where you've got some grass area, some picnic benches, and where you've got other things that are there besides just the pool. And I think that gives us the opportunity to grow those facilities and to make them even better and to make them destination facilities. And I think that Spaney in particular, that in that setting, I think that has the potential to be a place where an entire family goes for an afternoon of swimming. You mentioned that a lot of the people swimming like outdoor features. Well, we don't have a lot of outdoor swimming in Coquitlam because you can't swim in Lafarge Lake and Coma Lake, and you can't swim in the rivers. So, we're not like Port Moody that has some lakes and things up there. So I think that we want to create those outdoor summer destinations, and what better place than to build those around some of our outdoor pools that we have today. I think the Y is going to be, if they come, I think that's going to be a big change for us. It's a game changer. But I think that we're in a good position because, as you said, I think that will take some of the pressure off of the Poirier. But I also think that if the Y comes in, it in itself will be a regional pool, and it will draw from Burnaby and from Port Moody. So although it will take some of the pressure off that, I think it will draw from outlying areas. And speaking of which, Port Moody doesn't have an indoor pool. I noticed in this report that we worked with Port Coquitlam and addressed their needs, but I don't know where Port Moody's going, or do we have a sense of where they're going, because they don't have an indoor pool. I don't know what the life expectancy is on their two pools. Do we have any indication? Because, as you said, these things tend to be regional and destinations. People drive past a pool to go to another one, and I would assume that we will probably see residents from outlying areas come to our pools.
I can answer that question for you. Port Moody has not done an aquatic plan to the best of our knowledge. We did, if you remember back a year ago when we were in front of you, we said we would approach our neighboring municipalities to participate. We did approach both. And it just wasn't in the right time for Port Moody to participate because of other things they had on their plate. So POCO did participate. At this point, we don't have any indication from Port Moody what they may be renewing, rebuilding, moving forward relating to aquatic facilities.
Okay. So as we see growth as the entire region, and I believe in recreation facilities that families move about within there. I mean, Hyde Creek is my closest pool, and our family goes to Hyde Creek as much as we go to the Coquitlam Aquatic Center. So I think that where we went with Port Coquitlam, I think it's good that we have an idea of where their structures are going, and particularly up in the northeast where we realize they're going to be reaching capacity. But I think that we also have to look at that our needs are good for 10 years, but we also have to recognize the fact that I think that we will see growth in surrounding areas, and I think it's maybe a case of if you build it, they will come. And I certainly hope that when we build things like the Spaney and we turn these potentially into destination places, I think we should welcome our neighbors to come for the day and buy lunch on the way and come to our community, because I think that we do have the potential to create some of these as destination spots, not just an afternoon for swimming. But I think also, we have to look at the swim lessons for sure is an issue with young families. It seems that everybody wants to sign up for swim lessons in springtime and early summer, and nobody's thinking swim lessons in November as we head into the Christmas season. So I think that you do see these peaks in facility and usage, and I think that some of the things you're proposing are great because they will allow us to address some of those peaks in capacity. But yeah, I think it's a good report. I was very happy to see the recommendations and where we're going, and I'm looking forward to seeing where we can move this along. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. I'm delighted to have heard Mr. Steblin's comments that we will use this as a guideline and that it's certainly not written in stone, because within 15 years a lot can happen. And I specifically want to note, I too believe that outdoor pools, you may think are a thing of the past now, but like everything else, like all the funny shoes and all the funny fashions, they have a way of coming back. And I really think that outdoor pools are a bonus for a neighborhood. And I voted against Rochester Pool being shut down, and I'm happy to say that I wish it never were shut down, because I think we need a pool. Kids need to know how to swim. We live in a coastal community, and kids need to know how to swim. It interests me on page 3 where you, under your analysis, you say users of aquatic facilities are very mobile, and yet in every other study that we're doing, we're saying we want people out of their cars and out of transportation. We want them to be able to walk to everything. So, you know, we're sort of contradicting ourselves there. I'm very delighted to see the pool that you were showing us with the indoor-outdoor. I think that's a really good idea, and I think it's very useful. I like the spray parks. I know the kids have a lot of fun with them. But I think closing the wading pools down, I don't believe that's the best idea. There's still little toddlers around that are 3 and 4, that their moms don't have cars, that they put them in strollers and they go off to the park. And even on page, where the heck was it? Page... It doesn't have a page number. Oh, yes, it does. No, it doesn't. In the report, it says one of the 8 categories of aquatic service that we're defining is respite from summer heat and water orientation for toddlers. Example, using shallow water to cool off and become acquainted with using a pool. And I think that's really important. So the use of, the use of toddlers' pools, I think, are still important. As for Eagle Ridge Pool, that pool is used a lot. And it's not just used by people that walk to the neighborhood. It is a destination pool. And as you've heard me say before, there are folks that come with their little kids and take the bus, and it costs them a fortune to get there. But they come and they spend the day at Eagle Ridge Pool. And so I'm a real proponent of outdoor pools, whether you are or not. It doesn't really matter to me because I am. The one thing that I do bring up, though, where you go on a lot about CCAC, and life has changed. And the CCAC pool, when we built it, we weren't supposed to build it. The community didn't want it, but I guess we thought we knew better, and it looks like we did. We built it anyhow. And it's a very great place. We have lots of people coming to it. And you say that you're going to watch how it's going along, how it's standing up, and it's probably halfway through its life, as you say. But its life to me is something totally different. That is one heck of an expensive piece of property. That is on the SkyTrain line. And that is close to Douglas College, close to a huge park, close to our Evergreen Center. When that pool rebuilds, I believe your plan for indoor-outdoor pool is good, but it's going to have to be, in my opinion, part of a larger complex. So it's not just waiting till it needs to be redone. We have to wait for the right opportunity to redo it. And that property is much too expensive just to have a pool on it. It just needs more, and we need more in the town center. Other than that, I welcome, as Councillor O'Neill, the outcome from the WISE little venture into our community to find out where and what they might build for us. And hopefully it will be in an area that we need it. And I too believe if it was built somewhere close in the low heat area, it might be some help to the folks in Millardville. We have a lot of young families moving in there, that and the Coquitlam area. So those are both important to me. And other than that, it's a guideline, and that's what I would treat it as. Thank you.
Councillor Reamer.
Thank you very much. My comments are very similar to the comments that you've already heard. I am kind of sorry that we're moving away from the outdoor pools. I think all of us here around the council table grew up around outdoor pools. And I, too, think that perhaps there's a possibility they'll come back. One of the things, of course, is the financial sustainability of outdoor pools. So I think this idea to connect an outdoor pool with an indoor facility is a fabulous one, and I think we ought to pursue that thought to a great degree. I, too, was concerned when I read the report because there was nothing about the Y pool in here. And, of course, my concern was, where you say you want to build a new aquatic complex in northeast Coquitlam. And I know the people out there in Coquitlam, too, would like to see this sort of thing. I did have one question concerning the capacity at CCAC. And I don't, maybe if you could just flick back to the numbers. I've been to CCAC on many occasions, and I've seen it just completely full, and the parking lot full, so full that you can't get a parking space. So I'm assuming that the capacity you refer to is not all during those real peak times, that it's during other parts of the day. Is that correct?
The capacity is looking at the whole 16 hours of operation in a day. And CCAC, I admit, can be really busy on weekends with the water slide going and the wave pool and stuff. But if you also look during that time, the diving tank or the deep end won't be as busy. There's a lot of people coming to the destination features. And during the day, that's a lot of water available for other things on non-prime time. So that's where the capacity is. You're absolutely right. It's not necessarily in the prime time, but it's in the shoulder periods.
Okay, that's great. Well, all in all, I think it's a great report, and it's a guideline, and it can be changed if we feel it does need to be changed. So I will support this going ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you. I won't go through the whole report and tell you what I like and what I don't like. I pretty much like it. One of the things I liked was when you talked about people driving by, you followed that right up with the need to consider transit in future locations. And I think that's absolutely appropriate and a wonderful idea. But the only real new location we have is in the Northeast, and you've sat here when you weren't at the podium and heard us talk about transit in the Northeast. So it's a challenge for all of us, and I guess I'm offering you the opportunity to reinforce the need for those of us who have whatever meager influence on TransLink to try to get the transit up there so that we can get the swimmers up there, and maybe even before we build the swimming pool. The second one is expansion of Spaney. Sounds great, wonderful ideas. I'm wondering what the potential impact is on Mundy Park, both in terms of the forest and in terms of other recreational uses that go on now.
Through the chair, this study are some guiding principles now, and we have not begun to do the detailed work to say what that would look like. There is land in Spaney that is not part of that dedicated forest part of it, and parking lot and other things. So on preliminary first blush, I think there's some real possibilities without major disruptions, but we have not begun to really look at it. And if Council does adopt the strategy, I believe it's in the sort of year 5 to 10, that we would really take a good serious look and come back and have that dialogue with Council as always before any final plans are made.
Okay, think you can get a bus down Hillcrest? Again, okay, so we intend it to be a destination
I hear you.
pool.
Yeah.
And we've heard from Councillor Robinson that she knows lots of people who don't care to have automobiles, but they do care to recreate.
Well, there is a bus right in front of Spaney.
Right down Hillcrest?
Yep.
Oh, pardon me.
Yep.
How often? That's not bad.
Yep, 2 or 3 days a week.
I can only dream of that.
I think Councillor Robinson's telling me it's hourly on weekends, which is maybe destination on Sunday. Okay, thanks. And finally, capital costs. You said $60 million without land. I think you said something about land costs, but I missed it. Do we have any idea what we'd be looking at with land?
For land? No.
No.
No idea at this moment.
It's not free. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. I'm in agreement with just about everything that's been said. I, too, have a real connection to outdoor pools, and I'm very curious about the utilization for the 3 different pools that we have on the slide. And I'm wondering, I mean, they're in such contrast, right? Spaney is just about at capacity. I'm a Spaney family myself, but it's in my neighborhood. And then you've got Eagle Ridge, which is half, and then Rochester, which is barely. And I'm curious if you could help me understand why there's such disparity between the 3 utilization rates, because they're all outdoor pools, they're all sort of centered in the middle of these neighborhoods, but their utilization rates are so different.
First of all, Rochester Pool isn't used by swim groups. It is used, when we look at our 8 categories we talked about earlier, Rochester was used primarily for recreation swimming and respite. There wasn't swim club training, were not many lesson programs because of the depth of the pool, wasn't a lot of therapy stuff. So what it could offer in a full-service pool was limited, and it was only open for 8 to 10 weeks.
Okay.
So that's part of it. With Spaney, it is a swim club central. So what drives that numbers is even before the public sometimes gets in there in May, they're in there swimming, and they're putting their large swim club in there for 4 to 6 hours a day. So that builds hour per hour swims. Which helps build that up. It's also open the longest season. Eagle Ridge, we've seen growth in Eagle Ridge over the last while, and the swim clubs are beginning to use it more into September. So it is growing. But that's the main reason for Spaney, is the swim clubs support the number of events and offerings.
So as things continue to grow, because we're in a growth phase in our community, do we anticipate shifting some of these utilizations of like the swim clubs from Spaney over to Eagle Ridge just to balance out our numbers, or is that something that we would have to look at?
I think that would be a discussion for the swim clubs. Right now, the major outdoor swim club does use both facilities. Okay. They started 50 years tradition with the Sharks, and is there a separate swim club at Eagle? No. So that's our summer one.
Well, I love Spain,
and I know
they are
trying. They are growing in their numbers for summer swimmers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, for most of those years, Blue Mountain Senior Pool was their home, their primary home, and it got moved to Spaney in about 75, I think. Councillor Asmussen.
Well, thank you, and it's a good report. I like the whole direction of the report. There's some tough decisions that are going to be made moving forward down the road on this one. I think, as the city manager pointed out, that this is a guideline. The years in here there's flexibilities. I think people also understand the swim clubs are that we have a lot of pressures of there's not enough facility funding in the city of Coquitlam at present, or to fund the replacement of facilities or the addition of all new facilities, whether it be pools, covered outdoor for indoor sports, covered facility, covered lacrosse walks, another ice arena. What are we going to do with ice? We have a lot of commitments, and we have to then rationalize our dollars in the most economical and the best way that we can spend them. And while outdoor pools may be a love of people from years past, the cost of an outdoor pool to construct things is around $5 million. You're looking at a 3.5 month to 4 month usage rate out of it for your dollar and your investment coming back in. I've driven past on a daily basis between Rochester and the old wading pool that was taken out in Mackin Park, and the days and days go by where there's almost nobody ever using the wading pool. There's a change in culture. People like spray parks. Wading pools they don't use as a cultural tomorrow, but it's also the dollars invested. And as a council, with all the pressures, I like the direction. I think it's on people may not like the direction of closing some outdoor pools, but if we're going to invest, we have to invest for the best return, for the highest rate of use, and the best facility that are going to meet the needs of swimmers and all our other facility needs within here. If you're going to put $4 million, $5 million, $6 million into an outdoor pool that gets low usage rate, what are we going to be taking away from other facilities that we may need? And that comes into the budgeting process, and that's where I like the short, the mid, and the long-term vision on this, even though it goes to budget every year. And the difficulties that we've seen today with the tax rate, people wanting to keep their taxes down, the lack of flexibility in increasing taxes. Now, we did a 5-year 1% tax increase for the roads budget, and we were going to do a 5 years for facilities. We did 1% of that, but we've abandoned the other 4 years. We still are short of meeting funds or raising funds to achieve our facility goals. So I guess my comment is a very good report, but to the public, the financial stresses of the city are the realities that we have to deal with in making the tough choices, whether we close outdoor pools and how do we invest in something that creates the best use for the largest group of people in there. And so that's what and I think this report's done a good job on looking at that and helping us with those future decisions. So thank you on that.
Thank you. Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just the last slide that was on.
The last slide that was on?
Nope. The last one.
Oh, the one capacity?
Yeah, that one right there. Okay. We have outdoor swimming pools, and it looks like the Eagle Ridge one made money. And Spaney lost $18,000.
No.
Those are users.
Capacity.
No?
Capacity, not dollars.
Not dollars.
Yeah, okay. So it's not up to capacity, okay? I noticed that the Coquitlam Center Park, or Coquitlam Center, the swimming pool has got, could use another about 238,000 people or whatever it is.
The fourth column, yeah.
Yes,
While the Poirier Street is almost to capacity.
That is correct.
And how is Poirier Street? I hear that we lost money on it this last year, on the operation of Poirier Street.
Through the chair, none of our aquatic facilities recover their full operating costs. All of our recreation aquatic facilities are subsidized and operating by tax dollars.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now, when you're talking about closing outdoor pools, or, that they're a problem, costly to operate, I notice in here you say, in your Coquitlam Center, one just down here, which would include an outdoor water park area. Okay, that's what you're suggesting. You're also suggesting a potential wading pool or a leisure pool. I mean, these are things you suggest for our town center pool.
Eventually.
And yet on other places you say we should be closing them down. I'd like the explanation why.
Gladly. The report recommends that we do not build any more standalone outdoor pools. So it's talking about building a facility that is just a standalone pool with nothing else. It's talking about the efficiencies gained by clustering pools.
Yes.
So at CCAC, it's identified as a destination site, similar as Spaney, and what the report is saying is let's capitalize on that and cluster and add an outdoor feature at CCAC and add that excitement of the outdoors in the city center attached to an existing facility, because we can operate it so much cheaper and more efficiently with tax dollars than we can if we were to invest in a standalone pool in a different location. So the report talks about no standalone and investing in outdoor facilities attached to other sites.
What is the difference as far as admission to an outdoor pool to indoor pool?
I'm
Price?
sorry, I missed the
Price
question.
tag, yeah.
The price of admission, outdoor versus indoor.
Yeah.
I think it's about 50%.
Outdoors right now is a toonie, $2, and indoor for a child is
$565?
Indoor for a child, though, is $225. So for an adult, I think indoor is about $5 and outdoor is about $2.
Yeah, so, you know, and then if you were to do this with your town center pool, where would you get the land to build all these extra things that you're saying? You want to build, you use the parking lot, what would you do? Cut down on parking, what would you do?
Through the chair, as with the question about Spaney and the impacts on the trees and the forest at Spaney and the park, this is a concept and a guiding document that's going to talk about what is possible. No plans have begun, and before any planning on a CCAC expansion that would include potentially outdoor facilities, we'd be coming back to council with some options about how that could be accommodated. We're way too preliminary to talk about what land we may use or how that might develop. It's scheduled in that 5 to 10 year range down the road. And as Councillor Reid has said, a lot can change in that time.
When you're talking about, you know, a leisure pool, a wading pool, and water park and that, you really, in the Coquitlam Center swimming pool, you have all that. You don't have a wading, but you certainly have a pool there where the kids have, you know, water spraying from different things onto them and all that. You've got that. So what I'm trying to, what is you trying to accomplish there that we haven't got there now?
An outdoor side with it.
Through the chair, you're talking about City Centre Aquatic Complex, the complex across the street. With that, we are trying to, through this strategy, make it more of a destination site than it is. We are trying to enhance the services to support the sport community and add an outdoor component right to the building. So you can go from the indoor deck right out to the outdoor deck to some sort of outdoor feature to be determined in the future, and then back into indoor. So one dressing room, one washroom, one shower. So we're talking about expanding that to be a real dynamite indoor-outdoor facility.
See, what bothers me is the fact that, you know, it's nice to have these facilities, but I'm saying to myself, how many millions would it cost to put these facilities, and what would the benefit really be there for the extra attendance and everything else, or would we get maybe the same amount of people with a lot of millions spent? That's my concern. Okay, because there's only so many people to draw from, and it's you know, it's certainly with the building that we have now, there's got some more capacity for another 200-some-odd-thousand people, and it's well used. It looks like it's making money, and it's a facility that I don't think I'd want to jack around with. Okay? Thank you.
To be clear, though, it loses money like all our pools.
No.
All of our city aquatic facilities operate subsidized. They do.
Okay.
None of them
In fact,
cover their complete
in Canada,
costs.
there's no pools that operate at a profit.
If I can go on again.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
That
Councillor Gorgon.
that swimming pool used to have 120% attendance, and even 110. What is it now?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the,
You mean
the
it like-
question.
Yeah.
You mean 20% more?
I remember the days when there used to be somebody on the door saying, you can't come in, we're up to capacity. That's happened many times. What's happened now?
What I can tell you is this study has shown that there is still room there for additional growth at that site. As the discussion earlier, the Councillor Robinson or Councillor Reamer brought up, it does get busy at certain times of the day and it may be at capacity. But overall, there is still room to grow in that site.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, I've actually pulled up the site, and I don't want to dwell on this particular one because I realize it's just a concept. And it does seem like the site isn't entirely used, and we also have a large surface parking lot that clearly needs to transform at some point because it is, as Councillor Reid says, the pretty valuable land. Now, this is dedicated park, though, is it not? The land that the pool is on? Is it?
Good question. Ms. McKay, CCAC dedicated parkland?
Okay.
I'm sorry, we don't know off the top.
I don't think anyone on council wants to convert it from park in any case. But I think there can be greater use made of these. I look at the one, I used to work at Spaney in the 70s, and it has a very large clearing. It's got an awful lot of parking that isn't parking dedicated for public swim. It's parking for the 2 or 3 swim meets that need that amount of parking, as well as for the baseball, which is usually an evening activity. So I'm not concerned there about the amount of parking. I do think, though, that there is a lot of room for taking that facility into this century. It's a facility that was built in a different era, and everyone's tastes change. I've asked the clerk to pull up a photo. This is actually a photo that Councillor O'Neill discovered on the internet, or at least it's one darn close to it. And it's going to be on, no, it's not there. You don't need it. No, it's not there. Okay. How about that? Anyway, in any case, I'll go to the next question. The next question. How many outdoor pools have been built in British Columbia in the last couple of decades? Can we contemplate that? I know Westminster has one, but
I'm going to look to Ms. McKay for this answer.
Through our consultants who are experts in this area throughout the province, they have worked with hundreds of municipalities throughout British Columbia, and I think they can count on one hand the number of communities that have been building outdoor pools. I can't remember offhand the actual statistics, but it was overwhelming information that clearly articulated the trend away from building standalone outdoor pools.
Now, I look at these, when I called these up, Councillor O'Neill discovered them, and I found them particularly telling because we have a large international population that was born in another country, and a population that we look at our swimming pool usage today, and we see a very multicultural reality there as well. And I wonder if that, I assume that has been taken into account with the kind of demand that you've predicted or projected into the future.
Through the chair, Mr. Mayor, we have standards in British Columbia through the Health Act that govern the usage and lifeguard ratios of participants in public aquatic facilities. This was not an image that came up in the development of our long-term strategy.
As a former lifeguard, I got to tell you, this is nightmare. This is nightmare. No, I don't think anyone is suggesting that this is what's ahead of us. And in fact, if we do need to expand our facilities, it's because it's a popular activity that has its limits within a given facility. I'm left with, there was one other question related to the timing of outdoor, swim team activities. We see more and more of the provincial swim meets are being held in indoor pools, largely 50-meter or 65-meter indoor pools. And I don't know whether discussions have taken place yet with the Coquitlam Sharks as to whether they foresee a large future in indoor pools or continue. I mean, there's no question that the popularity of that sport within outdoor pools remains strong. I'm looking at. And
I'll ask Mr. Blood to respond to that. He liaises directly with the clubs and works with them in organizing their very successful events.
Mr. Mayor, I can just speak to the conversations I've had recently with BC Summer Swimming, and they approached us to host the provincials upcoming in 2013, and they do look for facilities where they can run the double-ended swim meets so the days aren't so long for the sheer volume of kids that they have, so that it's less time actually spent on the pool deck waiting and they get through the events faster. So they do give preference for their level of swim meets to pools that they can run double ends, but going at both times to be able to meet the requirements of the number of kids that they are seeing. So it is something that they do give preference to right in their meat package handouts when they're looking for hosts. So.
And to what extent was revision of the existing CCAC to accommodate competitive swim spectators, I guess, is the main issue at CCAC. It doesn't have the spectator capacity that, say, Prince George or Nanaimo or Victoria's facilities have.
The strategy recommends upgrading CCAC to accommodate better spectator marshalling areas and amenities to the swim club for hosting these type of events. But as with the other ones, it's in that 5 to 10 year, and we haven't got into the detailed designs, but that is what the vision or what the direction of that was for.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, I want to thank you very much. This is a report we're all waiting for. I like Councillor Reid, and I suspect most of Council wishes we hadn't had to. I'll put it that way, because I wish we hadn't had to close Rochester. It was a pool that was having its trouble 25 and 30 years ago. There's no question that at this point the prudent decision may well be that we have to close it, but it has served a long life, and as the other two sister pools, Glen and Brookmere, also did. Nonetheless, I suspect we've got a very bright future in aquatics here in Coquitlam, and I thank you very much for a report that heads us off in the right direction.
Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Nicholson, second by Councillor Hodge, the staff recommendation. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Next item, item 3, pertains to the Greater Vancouver Regional District Bylaw to repeal the Mosquito Control Administration and Coordination Service. This is Bylaw 1179. The staff recommendation that Council consents to repeal the Greater Vancouver Regional District Mosquito Control Administration and Coordination Service Establishment Bylaw 1034 from 2005, and consents to the adoption of the Greater Vancouver Regional District Bylaw to repeal the Mosquito Control Administration and Coordination Services. This is Bylaw 1179.
Moved by Councillor Reid, second by Councillor Reamer. Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, just as is my wont, I did a little research and talk about the need for this. The Public Health Agency of Canada tracks West Nile virus, and their most recent report was to the end of October. And across Canada, there's 450 cases, most of them in Quebec and Ontario, and Manitoba is third. The number of cases in British Columbia for those 10 months equaled exactly 0. So a prudent move to discontinue the program in the face of statistics like that. Thank you.
Either that or else it's working. We should keep the funding going. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item number 4 pertains to public consultation for liquor licenses. This requests delegation to staff. Staff recommendation is that Council authorize staff to initiate a public consultation process for all new liquor license applications or those for a permanent change to an existing liquor license, which require that a Council resolution and comments be forwarded to the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch. 2, that the notification area be adjusted from the current distance of 400 feet to 100 meters. And 3, that staff be directed to investigate a revised model for the current fee structure and report back to Council if changes are found to be warranted.
Moved by Councillor Nicholson, second by Councillor Reamer. Any? Councillor Reid.
Thank you. I feel, and always have, and you've heard me babble on about this a long time, but liquor licenses, especially when we have such little difference now between pubs and restaurants. Actually, there's none except pubs are have to have much more stringent rules than the restaurants do. These actually are the face of our community in our downtown areas, and I think that it's very important to me that I know when a restaurant is applying for a liquor license or applying to change their liquor license. I think it's very important for this council to know, because people that move into our areas sometimes don't realize that down below they think it might be just a little tea shop or something, and then all of a sudden they find out it gets a liquor license and it becomes a happy place till midnight or 1 o'clock. So my question then to staff, I guess Mr. McIntyre, I would think it's yours, or, well, Mr. Clerk. The question I would have for you, when would council be notified that such a request came in?
I've discussed this with Ms. Lohr, and this is indeed managed through the clerk's office. And what we have agreed upon is a system where once we have the advertisement ready for the newspaper, so it'll be about 3 to 4 days in advance of it being published, we would send a PDF of that exact notification to all members of council so that you would have a heads up before it was made public, so to speak.
Okay. And I don't know that I agree. Sometimes I don't even agree with the 100 meters for the public hearings, because in some circumstances I don't think it's probably quite enough. And when it comes to a liquor license, I really feel that we should keep the 400 feet. So that's a greater distance, correct?
400 feet is, I would say, about 60, 70 feet bigger than 100 meters. As was pointed out to me earlier, it would also be a greater area if you were to use the map.
And sometimes it doesn't make any difference. I understand that, but sometimes it can. And when we start dealing with some of the restaurants that are going to be down in our downtown core, where we have them quite close, I think the distance is going to make a real difference. So I have a difficulty with number 2, but as long as we're being notified, I would certainly support the other ones.
Perhaps I can just speak a little bit to number 2. As the report notes, 100 meters is what we currently notify for public hearings unless there is a specific resolution of council to notify further.
I understand that.
In looking at some of the other jurisdictions, and this information is always subject to change, but this was a report prepared for the City of Surrey a while back, and I've got some validation from Burnaby as well. The jurisdictions are actually, we're at the higher end of the scale for notification. Burnaby is about 30 meters, Delta and Richmond are 50 meters, Langley Township and Surrey are at 100 meters. Not certain for liquor licenses, but for public hearings in general. And I would say that that's for public hearings. So if you're looking at the impact of, say, having a tower put with a high-rise residential tower versus liquor license, and some people may judge those impacts differently. We are more on the further out range. We are not amongst the shorter ranges of notification.
And I agree with that, except that when it comes to a downtown core that we're trying to make as concentrated as possible and as high density as possible, and we always kid about having 45 nail salons or something, but we could have 45 restaurants, and if they all apply for liquor licenses, we could have 45 liquor licenses, and anybody who's living on the 10th and 15th and 20th floor is not going to be a happy camper.
I would say that's true.
So I really feel I would like to keep the bigger distance. So that's all. Thank you.
I could speak a little bit further to that.
No. Okay, go ahead.
The chair is the chair. Absolutely, and I think one of the advantages for the city conducting its own public consultation process is that we do send out letters to a notified area. Generally, my understanding is that the liquor board simply requires a sign at the location and 2 advertisements, whereas we put 3 advertisements. So we believe that the letter process is actually very important. We believe that it gives those people who may otherwise miss it, they drive into their underground parking lot, they drive out, they don't get a newspaper because delivery is inconsistent to those apartment buildings, they would receive a letter in the mail. The second reality of it is, in those in the downtown core, I think we would be dramatically increasing the cost to the applicant as well, and that's maybe a cost of doing business, but for every number of meters that you extend it, the amount of postage goes up exponentially, and I believe the reason for number 3 is that we have started to see that even if your business is just on the fringe and your 100 meters comes into this particular core, you're looking at thousands of letters, and I think at some point you have to charge the amount that it costs the city, and so that the applicants themselves would assume a greater cost. It's just one of those balances that come into play.
And that's the cost of doing business.
don't disagree with that. I just
And
think
when
it
you're
is.
looking at liquor licenses, it's the cost of people's peace and contentment and their right to live in their own private property without unnecessary noise and annoyance. So I will stand, I can vote for it. So thank you.
Okay. My own comment on that particular item is I wish we had converted it so that we aren't reducing it from 400 feet to 100 meters. We're reducing it from 122 meters to 100 meters. And we could even put 400 feet in brackets if we want. But at this point, the public is looking at it and trying to figure out whether that's down to 25% of what it used to be. And I'm sure there's a lot of confusion across the board when we do it this way. And I recognize as well, though, that the existing regulation was written many years ago.
Yes, but it was a result of a council resolution at the time.
How long ago was the council resolution?
I'd say somewhere around 8 to 10 years. It was in the early.
It was in the early last decade, yeah.
Yeah.
It was written in feet.
Early 2000s, not hundreds of years ago.
Yeah, it would help me if I could see 122 and 100, because then it does show the character of the reduction.
I think it'd be about a 25 meter to 30 meter reduction. That's what we're.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 21.9.
Yes, 121.92 is 400 feet.
And there can be an amendment to change that distance. I think what we wanted to do is bring it into accordance with what we do for public hearings, because we want to have some logic behind the number that you choose. And
no, absolutely. And if council were presented with the question, it's currently 121.92, and we'd like to make it 100 like everybody else and all of our other regulations, we would probably all say that's fine. That's not that significant. But the way it's worded right now, it may well create some confusion. Personally, I have no particular issue with being more consistent than we are, because both of the numbers were arbitrary. There's no particular reason why it's 100, and there was no reason why it's 120. It's currently 121.92. So I'm perfectly comfortable with this regularization of the regulations. Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, the liquor licenses are fairly strict here in British Columbia compared to other provinces. You know, I mean, in here, unless you have about 32 seats in a restaurant, you cannot get a liquor license. You know, but I don't mind going to a place like Council Reid says, a tea place.
A what?
A tea place restaurant. You know, to where, you know, I might even invite Council Reid to have a little Grand Marnier with me one evening in a little tea house. You know, kind of restaurant.
I would suggest you make those arrangements more, I don't know, some other arrangement.
But anyways, what concerns me with the licenses, you know, is the pubs are asking for these extended licenses, extended capacities.
The pubs.
What I'm really, really concerned about, that we're heading down the path of cabarets. And you know what cabarets have done to our community. I remember the restaurant that was just down the street here, where I had to bring the management in 2 or 3 times and give them the last warning that we're going to lift their license. If they didn't clean up, there was fights in there. The police were there on a nightly basis, and we were going to take the license away. So they sold it, and now it's, of course, a restaurant and a good operating restaurant. You know, so what concerns me, Mayor, is the fact is that, you know what, we have now, the pubs want to go till 2 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock on a Friday and Saturday night. And frankly, to me, I'm really concerned about them becoming cabarets. And you know what cabarets do to neighborhoods, especially if the cabarets are not properly managed. You know, and I'm really, really concerned about that. And you'll see influx if we now have 2 pubs applied for extension, and if they get it, there'll be others right after that. They'll want more capacity, and they always have bands in there. And if they get till 2 o'clock in the morning, the circuit can become cabarets in a hell of a hurry. That's my concern.
It's those bands. The cabaret license, though, is an extinct well, not extinct yet. The existing ones
It is.
are on their
There's the
dead.
odd grandfathered one, but we've now moved to a system of food primary and liquor primary. That's not to say that the hours available under the former cabaret designation aren't available now, but one of the processes by choosing to do the public consultation process and commenting is that council retains the ability to comment as opposed to opting out, which would leave us in the hands of the BC Liquor Board, who does take this seriously too, I would say. But I think the second aspect on occupancy load is dictated by the building envelope and is not as subject to individual choice. It's
what really stops somebody like the Two Parrots pub that just applied for extension? They took the restaurant out. They got a lot more floor space now. Now it's all pub. And what's stopping them from hiring a band and using it like a cabaret? You can't tell the difference.
Yeah, I can't speak to that part of it. I can say what looks like a large increase in their capacity was actually an error by their consultant. They added something when in fact it was a transition of something. They've been made aware of that error. They apologize for that error. The error actually works against their interests, so it's not something they were trying to sneak by, and that would be the subject of the report back for them. As for the issue of bans, I can't speak to that part.
Concerns. Thank you.
All the restaurant.
Okay. Councillor Reamer.
Thank you very much. I want to thank staff very much for bringing this forward, because for the last 4 years that I've been a city councillor, we've had to be presented with option A or B, and then we always choose this particular option to comment. And then staff has to come back, then they go do the public consultation, and then they bring it back to us. So really, by introducing this, we're actually streamlining our process, and we're making it quicker for the client who's applying. So I really want to commend staff for bringing this forward. With respect to the notification area, what I did was I converted the 100 meters to feet. and so you're really going to about from 400 feet down to about 330, I believe. So it's not that great a change. I am happy to, if somebody wants to bring forward a motion to change it to the 400, I'm happy to support that too. But I don't think that this is a substantial change. And certainly when you look at what other municipalities are doing, it's very generous, actually. So I am in full support of this, and thanks very much.
I wonder how many fathoms that is. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have no amendments to offer. I have a question. You make the point that 100 meters is the requirement that we use for public hearings. Do we also have a signage requirement as we do for public hearings? A sign on the location?
We do not use signs in terms of our liquor application process. Generally, that's something that if we opted out, the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch would require that. But our alternative is the letter writing, which is not a requirement of theirs. We've not used signs in the 5 years that I've been here. It's not been one of the requirements.
Well, I'm afraid that it was my assumption that we would be requiring signs that led me to not follow Councillor Reid's lead. And in the absence of signage and wanting to be comfortable that those affected are likely to be aware, then I would move to stay metric, that we go from 400 feet to 125 meters. Come on, May. 125 meters instead of 400 feet. So we're now metric. Well, I was going to do 122 point something or other, but I didn't think that would be a good idea. 125.
Okay, there's an amendment on the floor that would adjust the notification area from 400 meters upward to 125 from
400 feet to 125 meters.
400 feet to 125 meters.
It would increase it by about 10 feet.
Yes. Well, I'm not sure why we wouldn't make it 120 meters, because that's closer, but, okay.
Okay, friendly 120? Thank you, Your Worship. No.
Well, I'm just, if we're going to be different, we might as well be different.
5440.
Councillor Nicholson, anything further on the proposed amendment? Nothing. Nobody else?
120.
Which the clerk has recorded as 120.
Yeah, clerk heard 120. All in favor of 120? All opposed? That motion carries with me opposed. You're opposed? It didn't solve the problem I raised. No.
You wanted meters.
I wanted the first one to be written in meters.
Do you need a motion to change the recommendation?
Councillor Nicholson, do you have anything else?
I have nothing further, Your Worship. I'm eager to express my support for the amended motion.
Councillor Robinson.
I feel very much the way the mayor feels around the feet meters thing, and if we could just have it in the same, either both in feet or both in meters as part of the language, so it's...
It was just quoting from the existing policy.
So if we can put in brackets, whatever 400 feet are in meters, so that it's easy to read and that people will understand.
I will take the friendly amendment of the motion to be that 2 will now read from a current distance of 121.92 meters, brackets 400 feet.
To 120 meters from the location in question.
Right. Got it.
Is that okay?
That is fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Any objection to the context? Beg your pardon? Yes. Okay. Is there any other discussion? The motion as amended. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
It's hard work.
Here's my favorite.
I should have said 250-meter pools.
And it turns out that would be 67 fathoms.
Yes, unit of measurement.
Moved by Councillor Askinson, second by Councillor Nicholson to adjourn. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. We'll now have a question period for any questions on tonight's agenda from the audience. Any members of the audience that have questions on tonight's agenda? Any at all? Any questions? Seeing none, thank you all for coming. And happy Robbie Burns Day for those who will be celebrating.